Okay, so I think we're live. Today I'm doing a bit of a hangout with D Walton, who has written a book called The Caveman Rules of Survival, and this is a topic that I've been really interested in recently because of the very simple rules that she's laid out that we needed to survive billions of years ago, and how we can translate that into modern life. So I'd like to introduce D Walton to this hangout, and I'll let her say hi to you all.
Cool. Hello, everybody. As Nickie said, name's D Walton. Job title, cognitive hypnotherapist, and general dog's body, and does everything else as well. Some of you on here will know me from Twitter as the Moiderer. Been on Twitter for quite a number of years, and I've spoken to lots of you over the years. But in the last year or so, I've spent a lot of time working with clients, helping them sort their heads out. And as I've done that, there are some things I've learned about the way the head works, and it kind of distilled down into this thing that I now call the Caveman Rules of Survival. And as Nickie mentioned, there is a book coming out. It should be out end of October sometime, which I'm very excited about, and on the bookshelves. And I'll be talking to all of you about how you can share that book and let everybody know about how wonderful it is. But for now, for me, this changes the way I think about the way we think. This is what's fundamental about the Caveman Rules, because I get people all day, every day, come and see me, who are struggling with all sorts of different things. And they often feel very guilty that they can't just get over it. People feel that they should just be able to snap out of whatever they're struggling with, whether it's that they should be able to lose weight, whether they should be able to stop smoking, whether they should just stop feeling really depressed or anxious or whatever it is. We all have this belief that we have enough control of ourselves that we can snap out of things and we can take control of our lives. And unfortunately, that's wrong. It's just not true. So we think we're in control most of the time, and occasionally we lose control, but actually it's the other way around, where at least 90% of your day, your subconscious is in control of you. And what that means is your subconscious's sole responsibility in life is to keep you safe and well. And we all know that that's the bit that keeps you breathing, fights off viruses, does all of that body stuff that the subconscious does. But what you don't realize is there's a whole bunch of semi-automatic stuff that the subconscious does as well. Stuff that you don't really think about, that some people might call daydreaming. The stuff where you walk out your front door, halfway down the road you think, did I lock it? Or you drive through a set of traffic lights and you go, is that really on green? Or even when you drive from one place to another and you don't remember any of the journey. And you go, oh my God, I just did that whole journey and I don't remember any of it. Anything could have happened. That's when your subconscious is in control, you're on a kind of autopilot. And a really good way to know that your subconscious is driving those semi-automatic things is when you're tired, right? And you go and try and make a cup of tea and you put cold water in with a tea bag. And it's only when you taste it that you realize what you've done, because you're so used to doing that on autopilot that you don't have to think about it. But the minute you're tired, the tiny little bit of your brain that's left that allows you to think is actually switched off. It needs energy. And so your subconscious is totally in control, and I'm afraid it's a bit daft and it's a bit stupid, so it's got no chance of making you a cup of tea. So that's all well and good, but then you kind of go, well, what happens? Why is that a problem? Because that's how we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to have our subconscious in control 90% of the time, 10% of the time we think straight. That's how the world's supposed to work. But whenever you have a problem, all it means is that your subconscious is overreacting in terms of trying to protect you and keep you safe from harm. It's overreacting, and so it's not allowing you a look in from a conscious point of view to take control. It's trying to do something to keep you safe, and that, unfortunately, that something is the thing that gets in the way of your life. So the best example is spider phobias, right? Number one phobia in the UK is spiders. There are no venomous biting spiders in the UK, although some people might disagree with that. But generally, there are no dangerous spiders in the UK, and yet the number one phobia is spiders, which shows you it's a very primitive reaction based on your subconscious thinking it needs to protect you. Now, all of us either are afraid of spiders or know somebody's afraid of spiders because it's such a big phobia. And if you think about a person, when a spider comes into their room, if they have a spider phobia, they stop being themselves. The person that's in control disappears, and they become a gibbering wreck who has to kind of freeze in a corner or climb on a chair. Now, everybody else who's not scared of spiders is going, you do know they can go up walls and things like that, while this person's going, ah, get it away, or, you know, you can stand on it, you can squish it, you can put it in a jar, you can do anything. So when you're not scared of spiders, it doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever that this person that you know, who's normal most of the time, turns into a totally different beast when the spider's in the room. And all that happens is your subconscious has decided that the spider is a threat to you. And because the spider is a threat to you, its job is to keep you safe. So it does the fight, flight, freeze response, and that's really hard to say those three things. There should be a kind of different letter starting each one of those, I've got to say. But it triggers that response to protect you and keep you safe. You don't have a say in the matter. Your thinking brain is switched off. Your subconscious says, protect, 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 keeps you away from it. Then when the spider leaves the room, it switches your brain back on again. And you go, oh, what was wrong with me? Why couldn't I just? Because you think you have this hindsight thing of being able to think when the spider was still in the room, but you didn't. So the problem we have is that whilst the subconscious being in charge 90% of the time is normal, it actually can really get in the way of our life if it's protecting us from something that we no longer need protecting from. So what happens is, you then say, well, why are some people scared of spiders and other people not? Why do some people struggle with weight and other people don't? What makes all of us different? Why do some subconsciouses kind of trigger a reaction and other ones don't? And that's because all through childhood, we are learning lessons that we need to survive as adults. In the same way as in the animal kingdom, you think about it, a little baby animal, like think of a tiger or something, it's taught by its mum and dad what it needs to do to survive once it becomes an adult tiger. We're the same. We are learning lessons from our parents of what we need to do once we become adults and how we need to survive. And those lessons are written into a rule book by our subconscious. So all through childhood, it's looking for things that it needs to learn, that it can put in a rule book, that we can then follow. Usually when you hit 14 to 16 years old, you start following the rules in the rule book as opposed to writing them. The problem is that children don't understand the world the way that adults do. So you're learning rules based on the limited understanding of being a child rather than understanding the world as an adult. So this is where miscalculations happen and go into the rule book. And there are three basic rules of survival that your subconscious is constantly evaluating. And unfortunately, those rules of survival are based on the caveman days, like with the spider. So the first rule of survival is you've got to just react, because if you take time to think, you're going to die. Now this is based on the fact that if you were out and about, you turned a corner and there was a saber-toothed tiger. If you take the time to go, right, is this a good spear? Have I got good running shoes on? Can I outrun this one? By that time, the saber-toothed tiger will be chewing on your leg. So your subconscious is designed, when faced with a threat, to trigger an instant emotional and physical response. Flood your body with adrenaline, increase your heart rate, get you ready to fight or to run away or to do whatever you need to do to have the best chance of surviving. So when faced with any sort of threat whatsoever, in the caveman days, your subconscious switches off your conscious brain, takes control, gets you ready with that kind of shortness of breath, beating heart. Probably sounds a bit familiar to you. Because although there's no saber-toothed tigers or even predators for us these days, we still find ourselves getting that same reaction of heart rate increasing, and we call it anxiety or panic today. But all it is your subconscious trying to protect you from being hurt. The problem is that it's now, because there are no predators, it's broadened its definition of what hurts you to include things that hurt you emotionally, things that make you feel bad. So when something happens when you were a kid, like you stood up and somebody sort of laughed at you when you said something, your subconscious could have gone, that made me feel really stupid. I don't like feeling stupid. Let's put a rule in the rule book that says don't stand up and talk because you'll feel stupid and that hurts. And then in the future, when you become an adult and you have to go and do a talk to a room full of people, and you try and step into the room and you find your heart rate increasing and your short breath and your sweaty palms, all it is your subconscious going, no, we're not going to do this. This hurts. This makes us feel really bad. My job to protect you. Don't do it. And the more you try...
Can I just interject there, Dawn?
Yeah.
So is that really a way, in this modern world, that's what we perceive as adrenaline? So it's a way of controlling our adrenaline in a positive sense?
Yep. The interesting thing about it is adrenaline is designed as a fight or flight response. It's designed to get us ready. We all know the stories of people who've been in accidents and they've carried on going despite. That's the adrenaline. And we all know that situation where you work and you're really stressed because you're always ongoing, and then you have a holiday, and what happens when you have a holiday? You get ill, right? because adrenaline is a protein that suppresses viruses in the body. Because if you think about it, if you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, you can't go, oh, look, I've got the flu, I really can't fight you right now. You have to just be in the best place that you can when under threat. So adrenaline actually suppresses all that other stuff in our body, increases our heart rate, and gets us ready to survive. So it's a natural response. So yes, it's even though it's no longer physical things that are threatening us, our subconscious is evaluating emotional things that could threaten us and triggering exactly the same response. So adrenaline is positive, but is designed to be a short-term tool. And also, it's not positive when your subconscious thinks walking into a room full of people actually means you're going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, and the reality is you're not. The reality is that you probably felt stupid for no real reason just because you had the limited understanding of a child. So the rule has gone in the rule book based on a very, I always think of it like you've got a cardboard box on your head through childhood with eyes cut out of it. So you don't see everything that's going on around you, and then that goes in your rule book, and then you spend the rest of your life limited because your subconscious decided that's a saber-toothed tiger. And the more you fight it, you can fight it, of course you can fight it, but the more you fight it, the stronger your subconscious drives a reaction to protect you, because that's its job, right? And you're being really stupid. You're going to go there into that room full of people, and there's a tiger there, and you're going to die. And it goes, you're going to die, and you go, no, I'm not. I need to do this talk, and it kind of, you have this battle, and so by the time you get on the stage, you're kind of exhausted because you've had the battle. So it's designed with a good intent, but the execution of it lacks some. So and that's just the first rule. And there's two others. So the first rule of survival is you must react first. So that's why when we are scared of spiders or when we have a phobia, we kind of do that thing of beating ourselves up afterwards. When we find that we can't resist eating certain foods because they give us comfort, it's our subconscious that says, do this because it's important. And whilst you can resist for a certain amount of time, it takes a huge amount of willpower. People who are on diets often say they've got no willpower. You've got a huge amount of willpower to resist your subconscious going, come on, eat it or you're going to die. You know, that's massive, that is. So whilst you can resist, at the end of the day, it takes its toll on you, and you will always default back to your subconscious being in charge, because it's in charge 90% of the day. So the first rule of survival, got to react first, don't take time to think about it, or you're going to die. Second rule of survival, also based on the caveman days, if your parents don't love you, you're going to die. Because as a cave baby, if you didn't have a bond with your mother, you wouldn't get fed. You see this in the animal kingdom all the time. If a mother and baby don't bond, then the baby dies. So this is based on that rule. And what it means is, all through childhood, we have a genetic programming to connect what happens in our life to how much we're loved, or how little we're loved. So an example would be, let's say you're 8 years old, you sat at your kitchen table doing your homework, and your dad comes in from work. And you go, Dad, I'm really stuck on this question, can you help me? And your dad goes, oh, for God's sake, I've only just got in through the door, can't you do anything on your own for once? And off he stomps. Now, your subconscious is looking to learn a lesson from everything that goes on. So it goes, all right, I asked for help, I got shouted at. Being shouted at means I'm not loved, because we have to connect everything to love. Therefore, the rule that goes in my rule book says, don't ask for help, because asking for help means you're not loved. And so for the rest of your adult life, you kind of don't ask for help, you struggle on by, you just don't feel right about it. You don't know why, but you just don't feel right about it. And it's not, if you go back and look at that as an adult, you kind of go, well, firstly, if you'd left him half an hour, he'd have probably helped you. It's just that you got him from work and he might have had a rotten day. Secondly, just because he shouted at you didn't mean he didn't love you. It's just your primitive subconscious that needed to equate it to that. And if I put 100 people in that same situation, only one of them actually might interpret it as not being loved, and the other 99 might think nothing of it. So the challenge with this is that we're miscalculating, and we're all doing it on an individual basis. But it works in the other way. So let's say you fall over, you scuff your knee, and your mother gives you a sweet to say, oh, there you go, there. And you go, oh, right, I fall over, I hurt myself, my mum gives me a sweet, which means she loves me. Then when I'm an adult and I need to feel loved, what do? Well, I eat sweets because they make me feel loved. These simple miscalculations happen all the time through childhood because we have to connect everything to love for survival. So that goes in a rule book. So rule number 2 is, if your parents don't love you, then you're going to die.
Right, can I ask a question about that then?
Yes.
So whose responsibility then is it to nurture that? Is it for the child to understand more, or is it for the parent to raise their child slightly differently to believe that they're going to be fought for and to believe that they're going to be loved? I mean, ultimately, it's going to be the adult's responsibility, isn't it? But how do we pass that on to the child so that they're not completely dependent?
It's a really good question, because these are genetic and innate rules that we will always measure against. What I kind of do an experiment on this one, because this is kind of a new way of thinking, right? But what I say is, well, the problem here is that events are connected to love. That's what the fundamental problem with this rule is. I mean, there is real value in being able to empathize and understand the impact of what you do on other people. So there's some value in the rule. But the problem with the rule is that we connect things to love that shouldn't be. So as a parent, the simplest way that I can think of to compensate to some degree for this rule is to use the phrase, I love you even if, and to use it throughout your day-to-day life. So, you know, they get ketchup on their face and you're all giggling. I love you even if you've got ketchup on your face. I love you even if I'm shouting at you. You know, I love you even if you just told me you hate me. And no matter what happens, and you've got to do it not just on the big stuff, because people then go, oh, well, I'll do it. I do say I love them, even when I've shouted at them and we've fallen out. I still say I love them. It's not that. It's every single event in your day. You need to trivialize the meaning of things to love. You need to make it so that your child cannot possibly ever associate any event, any falling out, anything to meaning they're loved more or less. And you just say, by I love you even if, can do that.
So it's back to the subconscious again.
It's all subconscious. You're not in control of yourself. You know, it's subconscious, so that they don't end up in a rule book that says I'm not loved because they can't physically put that rule in the rule book if you've just said I love you even if this has happened. So, and we know as parents, what we know is there is nothing that our children will do that will change how much we love them. But they don't know that. Their subconscious doesn't know that, because the rule says you must equate everything to love. So just saying it over and over again to the point where it becomes ridiculously trivial is a good way of doing it. And what you'll find is the first time you do this, no matter how old your child is, it does change them. You see them weight lifted. It's a really weird thing. The first time you do it, the look on their face is weird. And it's quite a fun one to do. And then when you see that look on your face and you see how they respond, it encourages you to do it more and more, because it's quite fun. You know, and then actually if you get to the stage where they say it back to you, where they're having a major tantrum, and then you kind of, I love you even if I've just had a tantrum at you, that's, you know, you're getting somewhere there. Yeah. You know? So yeah, that's one of the ones we really can control as parents. The fight, flight, freeze one, the first rule, is a bit trickier, because that's pretty innate. And the third rule that I'm just about to tell you about is not as much under your control as it is everybody else's, although you can do stuff. So the third rule of survival is, if you're not part of a pack, you're going to die. Because in the caveman days, you could not survive on your own. There was just no way of surviving on your own. So we are, again, genetically programmed to attach to the stronger person in a pack, but also to get rid of the weakest person in the pack. And the problem with this is, if we, for whatever reason, think we're the weakest person in the pack, and this happens at school a lot. So you're at school and somebody calls you a specky four eyes. It's an insult, it means nothing, but to your subconscious, you've just been identified as the weakest person in the pack. And being the weakest person in the pack means you're going to die, which is a big deal. So your subconscious goes, right, we have to find a way to not be identified as the weakest person in the pack. So the rule goes into your rule book that says, stay away from the pack. You're different from them. If they spot that you're different from them, that you're going to die. So you end up with kind of never feeling like you're fitting in, never feeling like you're good enough, just feeling like you're socially isolated, because somebody threw a random comment out that your subconscious had to equate to, do I fit into the pack or not? And that's what a lot of self-esteem, low confidence issues come from. Some innocent, tiny events, and these aren't big things, you know, everybody assumes that when somebody comes to me and I'm trying to help them, that the caveman rule there is going to be a really big traumatic event. They're not big traumatic events. I have an example of somebody who, just to give you a kind of example of when these rules get set in place. I had somebody who was 11 years old. He was a guy and he was playing tennis with his friend. And he hit the tennis ball out of the court. And for some reason, his best friend fell out with him. Now, 11 years old was significant because at 11 years old, you're moving from primary school to high school. So he'd had a great time at primary school. Everything had been marvellous for him at primary school. But then he fell out with his best friend, and in falling out with his best friend took all the other friends with him. So he went from primary school to high school with no friends, feeling like he'd done something wrong because he hit a tennis ball out of a ball court. And a couple of years later, he was friends with this guy again, but then for the rest of his life, he was desperately trying to fit in. And through school, it meant that he did crazy things to fit in. But after school, it meant that he never felt that he was not good enough in the workplace. And it was just because of one simple little event. Now, working together, we were able to change the memory of that event because memories aren't real. And he didn't hit the tennis ball out of the court. And that was it. No anxiety, no rule in the rule book, because this is about deleting rules from the rule book, not about changing what happened. It was the problem with that event was not what actually happened, it was that it became significant to his subconscious, and it didn't need to be. So the work that I do with people, with the caveman rules, and you can do it yourself if you can work out what's going on, is working out which is the significant moment that the rule went into the rule book. Because if you just delete the rule, the event can happen. Like the guy, doing your homework at the kitchen table, the problem with that wasn't that your dad had a ratty at you because he came in from work and you asked him a question. The problem was that you made it significant.
Yeah. So, well, that fits really nicely into what I like to talk about, which is about thinking differently. And it's basically taking one step back to take two steps forward. So you have to reevaluate, which is what you were just talking about, changing the memory or eradicating that memory, making differences to the actions that you've already taken. So you reevaluate. From that evaluation, you make plans, and then you take action. So it's one step forward and two steps back. And I was working with young people, a lot of the time from deprived communities, but also, from all walks of life and everything. And it was about changing their perception on how they were living in the modern world. Basically because there is a generation of young people out there who aren't given these rules of survival because they're living in a digital world and everything is immediate and it's got to be done now and they've got to share it with people, and their only value in life is if they're getting recognition, whether that be positive or negative, for what they're doing now, and they're living in the here and now. And I really needed them to change that perception of themselves because they weren't going to be able to progress any further. So this generation of young people that we've got now are growing up in a world where they've never not known the internet. So taking your caveman rules of survival and moving it into a digital world, I think that we need to get them to reevaluate what they're doing and what they're doing with this online life that they're all creating for themselves, because in some respects it's giving a lot of people, or the perception is giving people false hope and ideas. It's giving them a pressure to perform, and they have this need, I think it is, to share everything that they do with their life. I mean, we all hear, oh, I'll put it on Facebook, or I've just uploaded something to my photo album, I'll tag you in it. And obviously there's a lot of young people now on YouTube doing the vlogging, and I'm really interested in that side of things because they are perceiving, well, they are performing to an ideal world or giving out their ideal world. You don't ever see what happens in the other 23 hours of the day. It's all very orchestrated, and I think there is an immense pressure for the young people of today to need to live that life as well, and that just falls into the to the realms of judgment and peer pressure and everything like that. So I just wondered what your thoughts were with that type of thing.
It's actually, if you think of the third caveman rule, this is about perception. Perception is absolutely spot on. I read something the other day that talked about we are one thought away from happiness. We can change our thoughts. And the example he used was an iceberg. An iceberg is a very solid thing. You can pitch a tent on it, you can have a fire on it, you can do all sorts on it, but really it's a couple of degrees away from not existing, from being part of the water that it came from. And one of the most difficult things that all of us struggle with is that we form a perception of ourselves based on what's around us as opposed to from what's inside of us. And it comes from the third caveman rule. That's what drives it. The need to be part of a pack drives the innate nature of us to do that. And so when you're in a world of sharing, then you're sharing because you want approval. And the minute you need approval, then you're on a loser, right? Because we all think that people think things about us, but none of us can read minds. So how the heck can we think we know what other people are thinking of us? So we then change our behaviours based on our perception of what we think other people are thinking about us. And the reality is, if you put a bunch of people in the room, they're all thinking that everybody else is thinking something about them. So you end up with this real craziness. So actually, you're on a loser. So teaching people that actually it's in their control, it's their choice, and other people's perception doesn't matter because they have no idea what other people's perception is a really valuable lesson. And as you say, on the internet, it makes it too open for them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, leading on from that, I mean, I have this thing about it's expectation versus reality, and the reflection is needed. This comes to my one step back from the reevaluation process, is you need to reflect on what's actually happening, because what happens when if you actually can't have it all, and this really worries me about the young people that I was working with over the past few years, because you then sort of spiral into the violence, into the depression, and this is when obviously people like yourselves with the cog hip thing, and I totally believe in that because I think it's an amazing process. But it's about how can they get themselves out of that rut and start to learn to love themselves again, because I truly don't believe that you can move forward until you've found out the restarting point, or you need to break habits, and you need to project forth where you want to be, which leads us nicely into I'm a huge goal setter, and I know you have an amazing view on this, which made me, when we were chatting about it the other day, really made me rethink about what I'd been saying about goal setting. I like lists. Everybody who knows me knows I like to write things down, and I like to have an end goal to achieve. And my way of reevaluating and taking action and moving forward is to hit that goal. So I'd love you to go over what you were saying the other day to me about goal setting.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because goals are a societal thing, and we all talk about goals, and we're all really big on goals. But the question that always worries me, and the question that I find always a problem, is what happens when you hit a goal? Because, weight loss is a really great example, right? So most people who lose weight or are working on losing weight do it by using the scales as a measure, which is a really interesting measure. So you use the scales as a measure of weight loss. And then what happens is you have a goal for losing a certain amount of weight. Now, let's say you get on the scales and they're exactly the same weight as they were last time you stood on the scales. So now you go, nothing shifted. Now, the fact that you might have done loads of activity through the week, eaten healthily, done whatever, you stand on the scales, and suddenly everything that you've achieved in the week is non-existent. It doesn't have any relevance anymore because this goal that you set yourself as an arbitrary goal has not shifted. And therefore you usually you end up in it doesn't motivate you to keep going. It kind of makes you think, well, I've tried all of this and it's been hard work and it's not shifted, so might as well give up on it. Or you lose a few pounds and you go, brilliant, I'm getting somewhere, and you kind of reward yourself for getting somewhere. You kind of take the foot off the pedal and you kind of go, right, that's working, just have a quick break. Or you might have lost enough weight to be where you wanted to be. Well, now what? Now what are you going to do for the next 20 years of your life? So you've lost the weight to get to where you want to be. That doesn't tell you how you can maintain that weight. It just tells you that you are capable of doing enough things to reach a certain point in time. Or you've put weight back on, in which case you kind of go, all right, I've done all this effort and it's put weight on, sod the effort. And you forget the fact that there is a reason why you want to lose weight, and the reason is never about the scales. It's not so you can walk down the high street with your set of scales and go, ta-da, look how much I weigh, because nobody wants to do that. People want to lose weight so they can wear clothes, they can feel good about themselves, and that's not next week or in the next 6 months. You actually have to live with yourself for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years of your life. So when you have a goal that is something that you're aiming towards, you have to say, well, what happens when I hit that goal? What am I going to do then for the rest of my life? And this is why there's that funny thing about New Year's resolutions. You know, this New Year's resolution, I'm going to give up smoking this year. And you get to the end of January and you have a cigarette. Blown it. Blown my New Year's resolution. Really? You've blown it? It's a year's resolution. By the end of this year, you're going to give up smoking. And presumably, you want to give up smoking by the end of the year so you can have given up smoking for life. So you having a cigarette this month that you set your resolution actually has blown your goal. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So goals are usually used as an opportunity to basically judge ourselves and beat ourselves up, as opposed to inspire us and motivate us. So I'm a bigger believer in process. I'm a bigger believer in what steps are you taking to change what you do day in, day out. And they need to be steps that you can live with for the rest of your life, because you want to continue to make those steps. And when I think, instead of a goal, I think about a beacon in the sky. I think about a light up in the sky in the distance. A thing that you can imagine all you're trying to aspire to, all you're trying to achieve in the long term. And you know, sometimes if you're in a really bad place, it can be quite hard to look up. And you know, you might just have a light, it might have a colour, and it might have nothing else in it, because when you're in a really bad place, just imagining anything that's remotely happy is too big a stretch. That's okay, just think of a light in the sky and that's enough. But the more you can load into that beacon of an image of yourself, and if you say in 10 years' time, when I get up in the morning, what will I do? What will I look like? What will be the first thing I do in that day? What will I do minute by minute, hour by hour for the rest of my day? That is in my beacon. And then, as I take steps towards it, I can know I'm doing something in my process that will get me closer to the beacon. I can also take a step sideways in any direction. I can actually go any way, and it doesn't matter, because the beacon is still there as a reminder of where I'm generally heading. But I can, as life does throw you different paths, I can take any path I want to, and I'm still heading in the right direction. I can turn my back on it. I can stop still, but it's still there. You know, and that's the thing with a beacon. It doesn't give you that opportunity to go, I've failed, or I'm not good enough. It gives you the longer term view of, what is it about my life that I'm changing? What is it I'm doing? Where am I aspiring to, as opposed to a stake in the ground? So that's kind of waffling on what my idea of goals is.
Right. Well, I just wanted to finish. We've been half an hour now, and I think it's left, hopefully, the viewers who are watching now or in the future on my YouTube channel. I meant to say at the beginning, if anybody's left any questions either on Google Plus or on YouTube, myself and Dawn are going to go back, have a read through of those and answer them, and that will be over time. So if there's any questions in the future, whenever you're watching this video, we will come back and we will answer those questions as best we can. I just wanted to end on a positive. So, you know, it's just like words of wisdom or something like that. As I think I've already said it, my word of wisdom is really to learn to love yourself, and that's hugely difficult, I think, if you're not in a good place already. It's taken me a long time to learn to love myself because of certain incidents that happened in my childhood and through growing up and whatever happens through adult life. But I'm in a good place right now, and it's taken a long time for me to get there. But I know who I am now. I know what I want, and I know that some things that you said, Dawn, have really changed, even in the past couple of days, changed my perception of who I am and where I want to be and where I want to go. So mine is leading back to the three-step rule, the one step back, two steps forwards, is learn who you are, learn to love yourself, and move forward with that. So if you can just finish on, you know, a word of wisdom and just repeat about your book launch, and then we'll finish off.
Okay. Well, I guess my philosophy in life is the title of the old book that I have, which is Nothing Needs to Be the Way It's Always Been. Just because these things are in place doesn't mean we can't change them. And that's it. There is always a way of changing if you choose you want to. So that's my fundamental belief. Understanding the caveman rules and where things come from allows us to know that it can be changed, allows us to know that these things are miscalculations. And it's nice to know that. It's nice to know it's not your fault. You have your subconscious in charge 90% of the day. We are all screwed up. Fact. We are all screwed up, and just accept it. Some miracle that any of us actually function, to be honest with you, given the way the caveman rules work. So in Nickie's eyes of being kind to yourself, I agree, which is don't blame yourself for the things that get in the way of your life, because they're actually not your fault at all. The book is out. It's being published through Changemakers, which is part of the John Hunt Publishing Group. It will be in all good bookstores and Amazon, which is supposedly a good bookstore as well, forever. And it's sometime kind of towards the end of the year, as far as I know.
Right. What I'll do is when we've got those details, I'll put them in the description box on YouTube and on Google Plus, so everybody can find those. I'll put the links to our website and details of how you can get hold of us by email if you want that. And I'd just like to thank Dawn for joining me this morning. And as I say, if you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments boxes and we'll come back to them and sort them out. So thank you for your time today. Thank you to Dawn, and I'll see you all soon. So thank you.
Bye all.